Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I found this mold and it's a monthly calendar mold, and then it comes with a weekly menu, which I thought is kind of cool. And my husband and I go back and forth all the time because I don't know about you guys, but I feel like the hardest decision of the day is what's for dinner. So we had talked in the past about making a menu-ish or whatever. And I thought that this is the perfect thing to do. It's a separate thing as far as I don't have to worry about putting it on the actual calendar that's on my refrigerator. That can be used for all my kids' functions and all that fun stuff. And we can have one specifically for what's for dinner. So I want to make a rainbow one. So the first thing that I'm going to do is kind of proportioning it out right now to the specific amount of cups that I need, which I think was like, I'm using 8 different colors. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of my Rolio Pearl White, which is kind of like a super shimmer type deal, just to give it that little extra pizzazz in there. Now I'm going to add my alcohol inks to each of these little mixing cups. And I think I put about 5 drops of each, with the exception of the yellow. I feel like yellow, it takes a little bit more to kind of, make it that bright, bright yellow that I want. So I used a little bit more in that. And then I'm just going to mix these colors up. The colors that I'm using are pink, red, orange, yellow. It's the lemon yellow, lime green, sapphire, purple, and purplish red. And then, of course, the pearl white in there. But again, that's going to be separate and that's going to be last. Now, as far as the 2 molds go, my main one that I want to do is the monthly one. The one with the menu is kind of, it's going to be different. It's not going to necessarily be rainbow. It's going to be whatever's left over from my colors after I am done pouring them into here. I'm only going to use a very, very thin coat, and, I just want to cover all of those indentations and the words and stuff like that and get that in there because I am putting a backing on this. So I'm going to start off with the pink, and you're working in reverse, so you want to make sure that when you're putting your colors down, you're putting them down in the right order. So for this, it will be backwards. And I just so happened that the amount of colors that I picked was kind of the perfect amount for each color to have its own little row, which I didn't plan. So it's really nice when stuff kind of works out like, you want it to before you knew you wanted it to do that. And I'm just going in and from, if you're going and looking by day of the week, I'm just kind of going in and filling each row going down. Not concerned at this moment about spreading the resin out. I just want to get all the colors in there before it starts to move so that it's going to stay, hopefully, fingers crossed, as separate as possible. And I'm hoping that I don't have a lot of movement. Now, I seem to get pretty lucky when I do it this way, as far as making my rainbows go, that I don't typically get a whole lot of movement in there, and I can kind of keep my colors, for the most part, separated. Now, there obviously, because resin does move, there is always going to be that little bit of bleeding or whatever, but I don't have a lot of movement. And in part, it's because I think that I'm using such a thin layer so that there's really not a lot of resin in there to move. Now, if I had filled this up, I don't think the results would be anywhere near the same. So I really believe it's because I'm using such a very, very, very thin, and I mean, like, it barely covers what I need it to cover, thin layer of resin. Now I've got pretty much the most part of my colors poured. I still have a little bit more in my cups, but I'm just kind of trying to move it and cover all of the edges from the very top, where, for whatever reason, when I was pouring, I didn't feel it necessary to put it in there, all the way down to the bottom and then to the sides. And you can already see, like, the green is moving into the yellow a little bit. Unfortunately, right now the blue and purple are very much blue. At least that's what it looks like on my camera anyway, but they actually are like separate colors in real life. My camera doesn't like purple for some reason. And then I'm going to after I do this, I'm going to add a little bit more cuz you can see I don't have nearly enough for, around those corners, and I don't want to put a lot of the super sparkle in there. Like I said, it's just a little bit, so it's not like I'm going to rely on that to fill up the rest of the areas that need filling. So I'm going to go back in there and add just a little bit more color where I need it. Kind of push some of those other colors out, and then we're going to go over and carefully so that we don't mix these colors too much, go in there and pop any of those bubbles, not pop them, but we're going to go around with the tool and kind of loosen up any of those bubbles that are caught. There are a lot of things in this mold for bubbles to get caught to. I mean, all of these lines and the lettering, I mean, it's a lot for these bubbles to grab onto. So, in my opinion, whether or not you choose to do a rainbow color or you choose to do whatever color it is that you want to do for your calendar, I think it would be best to at least start with a clear layer of resin first, just a very, very thin one if you're going to do a color or whatever. And the reason for saying this is, at least if you start with a clear layer of resin, before you put any colors that you can't see through, you can tell where all of those bubbles are being trapped at. So you'll be able to get them all to move before, and actually be able to see what you've got going on. So if you're going to have an issue with it or not. If you go in there with an opaque color and then you're just guessing that you've gotten everything. And I'm telling you, like, it's sped up now. I worked on this for a hot minute to get all of these bubbles that were trapped in all of the lettering and all the sides and lines and all that crap. It took me a hot minute to do this, but it's definitely doable. I don't think I had, but maybe a couple that I missed. I think it was like towards the bottom of the mold on some of those lines. I missed a couple, and that was pretty much it. But in pouring it, oh, there was so many that got stuck there. So you definitely want to take your time and do that. And I think that regardless of however you decide to do it, I think a clear layer first would be better. Or if not clear, something translucent that you can see through and you can get those bubbles before you put that opaque background on there. Uh, so I went through, added all my stuff. Now I'm just adding a little bit more of the color to it. At this point, I had forgotten that I had the other mold to fill, and I already knew that I didn't necessarily want the other one to be like rainbow, not rainbow like this. I wanted as much of the colors in there as possible, but I wanted to kind of try something a little bit different with it just to see how it would turn out. Uh, My results are kind of, I mean, I've got mixed feelings on how I feel about it, but you'll see at the end, and then you can let me know what you think. So now I'm going in there with that super shimmer, and I'm just kind of throwing it in there, like really thin lines, just to kind of give it that little bit of sparkliness. And like, again, it's not a lot, guys. Like, it's really not a lot. I'm just kind of thin lines with it with my tool because I know that it's going to spread and I don't want it to overtake it. I just want it to add to it just a little bit. So that's it. We're done with this piece. Just going to go and kind of like there's a couple big blobs there and I just want to spread those out just a tiny bit. But that's it. Done. Now it's time for my experimental menu. So, like I said, I don't have nearly enough colors to do the rainbow effect. Yeah, so these guys, I completely forgot as I'm sitting here watching myself make them right now that I didn't do anything with them other than make them. I set them off to the side because I had other stuff to do with this and completely forgot all about these pieces being here. Now, with these guys, I'm going in with a little bit of color, just whatever color kind of corresponds with what's going on. Rainbow one, I mean, there's no way you can do a rainbow in that. I kind of tried with the first three colors and then just mixed it up. That would be something that either you're going to go in with a single color or you can paint over it maybe at the end, because it does have those embossments on there where you could, paint it if you wanted to, and you've got the separation of lines. I mean, you could go in there with a fine tip needle, but I ain't got time for all of that. And yeah, no. So now I'm going in there with the color that I have left over, and I'm just kind of, I guess, pretending that I'm doing some kind of new contemporary type art, the kind that nobody really knows what's going on and it's just a bunch of colors thrown. I just wanted to see what it would do and how it would look, and if it's something that maybe in the future I want to play around with a little bit more. So I'm just kind of going in there, mixing not mixing them, putting the colors down. If they move together and they hit each other, it's fine, but I'm not actually going like to try and mix it. I don't know. I don't know. I was just playing around with it, honestly, to see what would happen. And then I'm kind of gonna just let it do its thing. I didn't really have a lot of the super sparkle left. I used most of it, but I put a tiny bit in there that I had. And that's it. I mean, it looks like a hot mess now. Like I said, at the end, it comes out kind of neat looking. I don't know if it's something that I want to experiment with more. Probably, because I think that there's some potential for it. But, you guys are seeing it first in the process of my thinking and what I'm fooling around with. Anyway, so now this is the next day. These colors are all cured. And now we're going to go in with our backing. So I'm going to use the HTV mica powder, and then I'm going to put a little bit of the HTV white pigment paste in there as well. I want it completely opaque. I don't want to see through the white whatsoever. So, and I don't necessarily need it like super crazy shiny, but so it's kind of like a balance between the mica powder and the shimmer that you get with there, and then like the matteness that you have when you use a pigment paste. You don't have that same look that you get. It's kind of plain. So this is kind of like a happy medium in between, where I have almost like, if you're comparing it to gloss, semi-gloss, and matte on paint, like when you paint your house or whatever, it would be more of like that semi-gloss kind of in the middle between the non-shimmery and shimmery stuff. I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling on and I'm not making sense anymore. So we're just going to move on. Anyway, so mixed it up. Now, I had the bright idea that I wanted to incorporate the magnets in here at this point, and this way I wouldn't have to glue them on or try to resin them on or whatever later on. I thought that if I just did it like this, it would work. I don't know what I did wrong. I mean, these magnets are pretty strong magnets, and I don't know if, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's still too heavy for them. Maybe I need stronger ones. Maybe there was some resin that touched the top of them. I don't know if that completely ruined it, but I don't know, because I was able to stick magnets onto the magnets, and even with the magnets stuck onto the magnets, trying to stick it onto the fridge, it still didn't work. So I don't know. I don't know. It didn't like the magnets, though, for some reason. I don't know if I would have got a different effect if I used a different kind. Probably. Maybe they're just not strong enough, because, I mean, it is quite a bit of resin in here. But I just went around to make sure that I had the resin underneath of it and all that good stuff. And, so that the magnet cured into it. And then I didn't want it to cover it. Even though I've seen I've seen somebody do a video where they did a magnet in there and they covered it with just a thin amount, like, of resin. And I think it was on a chess set, though. And the pieces were magnetic to, but I'm saying, like, they were magnetic to the pieces in the board. So they put a magnet in the chest piece, they put a magnet in the board, and it was magnetic, and the magnet was covered with resin, and it worked. And I don't know why mine didn't work. So all I can chalk it up to is for the heaviness of this piece, I guess my magnets weren't strong enough. Anyway, back to the video. So filling it up, hit it with a heat gun. I needed to make a little bit more resin because I didn't know. I've never used this mold before. I didn't know how much it took. So I made a little bit more. And then now we're going to get this out of the way after we pop any potential bubbles. And we're going to work on this menu. So I slid my mold back towards the back and didn't realize that my silicone mat that I'm working on was on top of the other one, and it was on level, and then my magnet started sliding, and it was just a whole thing. So I had to fix that and get that out of the way. All right, now we're gonna just top off these little things that I did nothing with the white so that they are the same as everything else. And then I'm going to go around with my tool, especially on this sun. I was really worried that I was going to have an issue with air bubbles and all of those little tiny rays that are there. Now, these pieces, I could see putting a small-ish magnet in and they would stay and you wouldn't have any issues. However, where my thought process is that if you're going to put them on your like calendar or whatever, I don't see how that would work because it's not going to reach, like if you had it on your fridge, it's not going to reach through to get to the metal on the refrigerator. Like I don't see how that would work. So really, I don't know what these pieces are actually going to do any good for unless you put magnets throughout your entire calendar. If anyone knows of a way that it would work, otherwise let me know. I mean, aside from using like some kind of stickiness, but then that would eventually go away. You just saw me do was where the words are that the color didn't hit. I just took a little bit of resin and pushed it down into those holes so that I didn't have an issue with bubbles being trapped there. And because I can't see through the white, that's why I just did a little bit in those spots that I knew I was going to have a problem with before I poured all the resin. Because if I poured it now, I would have no idea where those areas were. Just kind of going through along where I feel those lines are going to be and hoping for the best that it kind of works out and I don't get a lot of bubbles. And I'm not going to do the magnets in this one, and we're just going to see how it works out. Now, because the magnets didn't work for me, if you wanted to try, you could very easily use like a command strip type thing and have that work on there. That's how they sell most of them anyway. Or, like I said, figure out a stronger magnet that's thinner, because I didn't want it like way up off of the refrigerator either with a big fat magnet. The only thing that you can see the magnets through these pieces, but again, we're learning as we're going, and I knew that that was probably going to be an issue, but I wanted to try it anyway just to see if anything would work. And I'm just demolding these little pieces now, and this will be the last time that either of us ever sees them. But I just don't know, like they're cute and everything, but I don't know how they would actually stick to your calendar, and you like what good are they for? That's just my opinion on it. Now, okay, are you guys ready to see this work of art? Here it is. It's different. It's kind of neat. It's kind of, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I think there's potential. I don't know how I feel about the necessarily with the colors, but I think there's potential in doing it a different way. All right, so now it's time to fill all of these grooves so that we can actually see what's going on. So I'm going to do like I do with my dominoes, and I am going to mix some of my gloss varnish and some black alcohol ink, and I am just going to take my silicone tool and go into all of those millions and millions and millions of lines that are in this thing and get this done. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. And you're thinking, why is she doing it the hard way? She just mentioned a needle tip bottle earlier in the video, as that would be smart and that would be easy. And I have already determined in my life I'm a glutton for punishment. So I will always do the harder way first. I do get smart later on, and I do it, but at that point, I'm almost completely done. But it took me forever. Now, I will say that doing it this way, first of all, with this tool that I had, it was way too big. And these lines, like, you're looking at them, and I swear to God, it's like you go to put it in there and then it gets all over the place. Now, if you're gonna do something like this with the gloss varnish, you want to make sure that, you know, anywhere that I was getting it that it was outside of the lines, I need to wipe off like before this dries. And it will dry on there, especially a thin coat like that, fairly quickly. So like I was doing a little bit and then wiping it off real quick. And I started out using a cotton bud, and then I went to a dry paper towel, and that worked. And then eventually I progressed into using just like a baby wipe, and that worked well too. The only thing that I would say is that it I think it turns out really nice, but you need to make sure that you get it completely full inside that little divot. And also, you still have to kind of watch for air bubbles just like you would if doing resin, because there can be air bubbles in that little thing where it's not going to cover. So, as I was kind of going along cleaning it up, I was looking for little air bubbles that got stuck in those too, and kind of popping those and cleaning that up and then adding more where I needed more. Big holes like this, it kind of like goes to the edges. So you'll have to go in there maybe a couple of times just to fill it up. I did get to the point here where these lines were even smaller than that big line that goes around the outside of it, and realized that I needed to use a toothpick because I was just making too much of a mess, and it was just going everywhere. So I decided a toothpick would be better, because at this point I still hadn't gotten smart and realized that I have a bunch of those bottles that I could have very easily used, and it would have made my life so much better. And instead of spending an hour doing this, I could have got it done in probably like 20 minutes. But, here we are, just about done. And I mean, I think it's looking pretty great. I really, really like it. Like, this turns out beautiful, I think. I love the rainbow. I love how the colors pretty much stayed where they needed to stay. I think it's gorgeous. And, as far as the menu thing goes, I mean, again, it was kind of an experimental thing. I like the idea of the menu, and it does look a little bit different once I get the black in there, but I don't know. I kind of think for what it is, maybe there's too much going on, and that when you write on it, you wouldn't necessarily be able to see as well. Like, maybe it just needs to be just a little bit plainer. I don't know. I'll have to fool around with it and see. But the calendar itself, I think, is gorgeous. Yes, here she gets smart. Isn't it amazing? Now I realize that I can use this and I can actually mix it in the bottle too, which, who'd have thought? But yeah, I just go over and I'm just filling up those things, and it works so well. I mean, so, 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 so well. And the good thing is that you can put the cap on it, the little like rubber tip cap that's on there. And like I still had some left over, and I checked it a couple days after I did this, and it's still liquefied. So like it's still good to use. So I'm not like wasting anything that I didn't use like I would have if I just left it in that little cup that I was using. But yeah, it turns out pretty cool. At this point, like, I mean, just let me know what you guys think about my experimental piece. I think it's a cool idea as far as the menu part of it. Like, I like that a lot, and maybe we might even use it. Yeah, laugh, laugh. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. I think that I will maybe fiddle with that kind of stuff a little bit more just to see what happens. I kind of think it's unique, and there's parts of it I like, there's parts of it I don't like. I don't know. But anyway, Let me know what you guys think. I really want to know, is this something that I should fool around with more and see what we can do with it, or should I just let it go? And on that, while I finish this up, I just want to say thank you to all of you for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I want to say welcome to all of my new subscribers. Glad that you are with us. And thank all of you guys that have been with me for a while now. Like, I appreciate you guys more than you know. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. I will catch you guys on Saturday. Love ya. Bye.